Here we are. You're very welcome to a new episode coming to you from Hacker Summer Camp. We're here in Las Vegas for Black Hat USA 2024, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Theresa Lanowitz. Theresa, how are you?
I am great, Sean. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's good to see you.
It's
always.
Great to see you. I love how you described it, Hacker Summer Camp.
Hacker Summer Camp, exactly. It's full of hackers, the place.
Totally.
They even ran some news segments this morning about all the hackers running around town and how to protect your phone and stuff, which is kind of funny. But we're not here to talk about hackers. We're here to talk about Level Blue and the great work that you do and the research that you do that helps inform organizations on how and where to position their protective measures and their teams to really shore up what they're working on. So. How are things been? What's new for you in the last few months since we connected?
Last few months since we connected. We last connected at RSA back in May. So since then, Level Blue was announced at RSA. And just to remind your viewers, Level Blue is a joint venture between AT&T and Wilgem Ventures. And we're a strategic extension of your team. And what we aim to do is really simplify cybersecurity by helping you protect your business intelligence through our cybersecurity consulting services, help you predict your security investments through our managed security services, and help you mitigate risk and foster innovation with our Level Blue Labs threat intelligence team, and that's cybersecurity simplified. So just a little commercial on who we are.
No, that's important. It's important, and all that stuff without you is a huge, complex challenge for many organizations.
It is. Yeah, we know everything is just unwieldy, and the IT estate is just so complex. Yep. And the other thing that's new is when we last spoke in May, we had just launched our Level Blue Futures Report, our big flagship thought leadership piece for the entire year. And then what we do over the course of the year is we release other research projects which are part of that Futures Report family. And that's one of the things, that's what we did yesterday. We announced our C-Suite Accelerator, which is, again, a thought leadership piece that's vendor neutral, forward-looking, and actionable, really highlighting the roles of the CIO, the CISO, and the CTO with cyber resilience.
Well, let's get into some of that, because I remember it was on top of my mind, and I think probably yours the last time we spoke as well. We briefly touched on the point that the CIO, at least through the conversation that I had, were becoming more prevalent in the world of cybersecurity and certainly risk management, and not just leaving it to the cybersecurity folks to deal with. And I think some of the research you've uncovered shows that there is a growing relationship around cyber and risk and IT ops between the CIO and the CTO and the CISO. So what are some of the, I guess, kind of frame the report for us that you did, the research around it, and some of the things you were hoping to understand and uncover?
Absolutely. So if we look at the differences between the CIO, the CTO, and the CISO, the CIO is in the business of the technology. So making sure that the technology that they're using to run the business is operational, functional. They're looking at ways to differentiate and so on. The CTO is all about that innovation. How can we bring on new ways of satisfying our customers, regardless of who they are, B2B, B2C. It's all about innovation. And the CISO is really about that operational security component, making sure that I am securing everything that's going on, I'm implementing the right security protocols, I'm bringing in the right cybersecurity controls. And I think people think of the CISO, the CIO, the CTO, and they think, they're kind of the same. They must be, a trio.
Right.
And what we really found out is that there's conflicting goals, not really conflicting goals, but conflicting priorities. The goals are the same. They want to do the best thing they possibly can for their business, right? But they have these conflicting priorities. And the CISO oftentimes does not report to the CEO. So oftentimes the CISO is reporting into that CIO. So in the event of some catastrophic event, whether it is a man-made event, a cyber event, a natural disaster, a fire, flood, hurricane, earthquake, the CISO, the CISO, does not necessarily have that full seat at the proverbial table to say, this is where we need to be resilient. This is where we need to bring cyber resilience in and work as a team to get our organization functional, operational again when that whole IT estate is impacted.
Yeah. So when I like to think in terms of pictures, maybe diagrams as well. So initially I was thinking kind of a triangle where the three roles, however you want to spin them, right? Who's more important? It's probably whoever's drawing the diagram. But then as you were talking, I was thinking, especially with the two, the CIO and the CTO, and then you mentioned CISO off to the side. I was thinking 2 points, and then a CISO kind of dragging on the two of them, right?
And I think in many cases that's kind of what it is. Right.
And then, but thinking as a triangle, which I think we all hopefully want to see happen, right, where they're kind of equal and joining together. I then look back at my product development days, and I think, well, you can't change that it's a triangle. You can only change the size of the sides.
Right.
And usually it's around quality and speed and cost, right?
Cost, quality, schedule, triangle, yes.
So with that, I don't know, does that conjure up any thoughts from you, or does it trigger any points from
the
research?
CIO, the CISO, and the CTO, they have to be equal. They have to be equal partners in what's going on inside of the organization. They have to be equally seen and equally visible and equally understood by the CEO. So in the event of some catastrophic event, and this is where we bring in cyber resilience. The idea of cyber resilience saying when the whole IT estate is impacted, what are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that we're all bringing things together? And the triangle that you envisioned, having the CISO kind of dragging along, the CISO is the only one out of those three, out of the CIO and the CTO, that has sort of a reactive type of budget. And this is one of the things we uncovered from our research, is that for all of the excellent work that the cybersecurity industry has done over the past 2-3+ decades, cybersecurity is still siloed, underfunded, and an afterthought. So we found out that there's not a line item budget through all projects for cybersecurity. And that's important, because when you do have that adverse event, that catastrophic event or near catastrophic event, you want to say, well, here's what we're doing from the security perspective. And if you don't have the CISO being that equal partner, that equal seat at the table, that becomes very difficult to attain and very difficult to achieve.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I saw, and I can't remember which report, it may have been the Futures report, but there was a point, and I think it was this report, that speaking to the acceptance of uncertainty, and which groups are okay with moving forward. And my natural mind would say the CTO looking at innovation, let's just go for it, right? Uncertainty is fine, let's see where we end up. But what did the research find in terms of...
Exactly, the CTO saying uncertainty is there, but also the CIO can accept a little bit more uncertainty as well. The CISO doesn't want to accept a whole lot of uncertainty, because the CISO knows that if there's some uncertainty, that means that if there's uncertainty in the project, if there's uncertainty in what you're deploying, the adversary is going to be able to find that uncertainty as well. So the CISO is really concerned about making sure they understand all the different aspects, all the different risk components. They want to make sure that they are being very proactive and not looking at things as an afterthought. And what the CTO sees is the CTO takes a look at things such as compliance and regulation and says, that creates friction for me because I just want to innovate. But at the end of the day, we look at some of these new types of use cases that are coming out there, this dynamic computing. Think in healthcare, wearables for remote patient monitoring, robots on a manufacturing floor, autonomous drones, autonomous vehicles, smart buildings. In a compliant driven type of industry, the CTO knows they have to deal with compliance, but while they're innovating, they just want to have sort of a blank slate, so to speak, to be able to innovate and think differently.
Yeah. So what can you share in terms of, I want to hear a conversation, because you get to talk to these folks, right, as they're building and creating and transforming their organizations into something for the next generation. What did the conversation sound like, I don't know, maybe a year or 2, 3 years ago between these three roles? And how do you help change that conversation so that they are better aligned and not just working toward the same goal, but actually in lockstep with each other along the way?
Yeah, I think a couple, 3 years ago, we had the perfect storm. We had the pandemic, and what the pandemic did was it accelerated digital transformation. And as an industry, even without the pandemic, we were at this pivotal point where tooling is really good. Being able to develop a software program, being able to roll out a software program, a product, is so much easier than it has ever been in the past. We have the cloud, we have SaaS applications. So we had this perfect storm of the technology is so good, so much better than it's ever been, and suddenly businesses of all types needed to pivot. So suddenly this conversation around resilience started to come into play, 2020, 2021. And it was, I think at that point we started to see that the CIO, the CTO, and the CISO had conflicting priorities. So even though people thought maybe they're working together, we still saw, and we still see, a lot of isolated silos where security is off by itself. It's not integrated into the business. And that becomes a big problem for the business, because the business looks at security and says, I'm spending all this money on security, but I'm not 100% certain what I'm getting. So it's up to the CISO to really advocate for a proactive budget and align the cybersecurity goals with the business initiatives.
Right.
So not having those as two separate things, but really having them aligned together. And we also found out in our research that there's still a lot of unfinished business around digital transformation. You know, digital transformation was all the rage a couple of years ago, and what we're finding out is that cybersecurity teams are still dealing with the after effects of digital transformation.
Interesting. What, so many questions in my head. What's, let's see, which one do I pick? Because I'm just trying to think, we're probably doing better, and so aside from reporting structure, are there signs that an organization can look for to say we're not operating like we should? And then I have another question to follow that, but are there signs?
I think there are signs. Cross-functional communication. Does your development team talk to your cybersecurity team, to your networking team, to your operations team, to the line of business? So cross-functional communication.
So a signal there is, if you don't have that meeting scheduled.
If you don't have that meeting scheduled, if you're not talking to your counterparts, start talking to your counterparts. And you know, in the accelerator, we looked at CIO, CTO, and CSO, but it is also the level below, as well as all the practitioners that report into those three groups. So if you're in security, go talk to your developers, find out what they're doing. If you're in development, talk to your security professionals, talk to your operations teams, find out what they're doing. So cross-functional communication is a big one. Supply chain. So the supply chain is a really interesting one. We found out that 59%, almost 60% of the people we surveyed said they do not have clear visibility into their supply chain. And we think of the supply chain now, and it is beyond the physical supply chain for parts that we might be manufacturing or distributing or using. It's also the software supply chain. So having that software supply chain be something that we have complete visibility in is critical, especially now since you're required to put your software bill of materials, your SBOM. Where did this source code come from? And we're seeing more and more requirements around visibility and transparency about what your software supply chain looks like, what your software looks like. So that's another signal. What does your supply chain look like? And then what do your budgets look like? Are your budgets reactive or are they proactive? Because the CIO knows what budget they're getting every year. The CTO knows what budget they're getting every year from an innovation perspective, but the CISO doesn't necessarily know.
What makes it proactive versus reactive, the budget?
So if you know upfront, these are the business goals we want to achieve, and we can align cybersecurity initiatives with those business goals, we're going to be proactive. Versus, as we found in our research, across the board, on a per project basis, the budget for security increased 11% year over year, 2023 to 2024. And you look at that and you think, pretty good. But in reality, the reason the security budgets are increasing is because there are these external events, a breach, a competitor's breach, suddenly you as a security team, you start to get more money. There might be something from a cybersecurity insurance perspective. They may say you have to stand up this control that you don't have.
Okay.
You get more money for that. So it's reactive in terms of some of those things. A breach, competitor's breach, cybersecurity insurance, new regulation or compliance, visibility into supply chain. So you want to be proactive in how that budget is being allocated to you.
So how does what you do with your program help organize? I mean, I can see smart people. We can figure this out, right? Let's build a program. Let's staff it with people. Let's buy some technology. Let's deploy it, manage it, report on it, hopefully measure it. Let's leverage some standards and frameworks and things like that. But still, at the end of the day, it's however that person thought about that program functioning in connection to the business. And in there may be flaws. We're human. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just thinking program to program to program, if you look across all of them, they're probably going to be very different in how they function and how they're staffed and budgeted and all this stuff. And then I look to what you do, and I can only imagine that there's learned experiences across all of these to know if you're in this sector and you have this kind of maturity and you have this risk appetite and you have this budget, here's how you want to do things and not waste money, not waste time, not miss something and leave things exposed, or not really aligned to the business, think you are, not really be proactive, and in fact you're still reactive because you don't know what that really means. Mm-hmm. So tell me how you kind of bring some of this to the surface so teams don't, I think, waste money and waste time on stuff, right?
I think you make such excellent points, and there's so much new innovation, so much new technology that's coming out, so many ways to apply that technology. And that's where you make the case for that trusted third-party advisor. If you're doing something new, if you're innovating, you're creating new projects, you're creating new software, you're creating a new business idea, bring in somebody who has done this before, bring in consulting, bring in managed security services. Maybe you're increasing the number of endpoints, maybe you're going beyond the perimeter for the first time. Bring in managed security services, to help you with network and security convergence from a SASE perspective. Bring in people who have done this before. Yeah. Use that as that strategic extension of your team. Bring in global systems integrators, so people who have seen this, because you made the point that there's a lot going on, and we might be living in our silos inside each business that's running out there, but there are people out there who are seeing this at scale.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but by working with a trusted partner doesn't mean you have to give up your own creative ideas.
Not at all.
Right?
Not at all.
Don't give up the cool ideas you have. Just put them in play in a way that actually works.
And if you're using that trusted third-party advisor correctly, they do become that strategic extension of your team. You don't think of them as, oh, they wear a badge from a different company than I do. Right. They're part of that team. They're giving you that good input, that good advice, and they're working hand in hand. And that's why I went back to the idea of cross-functional communication, something that a CIO can really help with. It's that cross-functional communication internally, but also bringing in that trusted third-party advisor and having them communicate on a regular basis as well.
Yeah. Always comes back to the people, doesn't it?
It does.
Always comes back to the people. Well, Theresa, you are wonderful people, and I love chatting with you, and thrilled to have Level Blue on to keep chatting. We're going to talk more about some of the other sectors and some of the research that you've done in those areas to kind of help healthcare and retail and others learn from the research you've done and the work that you do. And of course, we'll include links to the accelerator report. Some of the things we touched on today are in there. It's a fascinating report.
Excellent.
Lots of good stuff in there. So hopefully everybody grabs a copy of that and reads it, and then takes action, because there's a lot of information to take action on there. And please do connect with Theresa and the Level Blue team. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching this brand story here on ITS Week Magazine. Thank you, Theresa.
Thanks, Sean. So great to see you.